Definitely in a interesting endgame position. Commerce are the white pieces. Denmark are the black. I have a brilliant move, but I cannot tell it to Frankie because that would be cheating. It looks like Frankie saw the move. That was a great move because, as you pointed out with your arrows, if he takes with the queen, your queen protects it. Great job seeing that. Um, yeah, you are behind on clock. It is important of you to notice that. You've still got plenty of clock, so you don't necessarily have to rush, but you've got to play really smart. Oh, that is most unfortunate. That's all right. Just make the best of the situation. Yeah, you're in check. And we're unfortunately down a pawn, uh, and then an additional 2 points of material. This game is definitely winnable. Just going to be incredibly tricky to pull it out. Unfortunately, the pressure is primarily on Frankie due to the clock, which 3.5 minutes is still plenty of clock. He just needs to make sure to use it wisely. Frankie points out that they're trying to set up a battering ram with the queen with the rook coverage. Frankie covering the battering ram with the knight. Let's see what the player from Denmark decides to do in response. Decides to retreat their queen a little bit. Frankie responding by moving the king up, almost as if he's getting ready to use it as an offensive piece. Unfortunately, he is in a position where he cannot move the queen out of the way, or else it opens up a discovered check. This might be the end of this game, sadly. Yeah, you kind of have to make the best of the situation, and if your queen's already gone, may as well take a rook on the way out. It would take some insane gameplay for Frankie to either stalemate or win this game from this position. It looks like they're going to use their queen to clear out pieces on the left side. Frankie correctly seeing that his knight's in danger, so they move it out of the way. Oh, no. Frankie cannot move his knight that's being forked by the queen. Folks, this is probably the end of game one, unless the Denmark player blunders and puts us in a draw. Yep. Looks like they're just going to walk Frankie back, and that's going to be game one going over to Denmark. Really good game from Frankie. The other player from Denmark played incredibly well too. All right, so for game two, we will be black. So make sure to report the results that they got game one. No, you're home team, so you still make it. So you make it and send the link, but you're black this time. Oh, you gotta go copy their name again. And this time you're black. All right, let's see how game two goes. An unfortunately incredibly aggressive start from the Denmark player. This is not a new strategy by any means. I don't know if Frankie wasn't aware of how this opening works, or if they just haven't seen it before, but this is going to be a bloodbath from the queen. The only goal is to take your queen and trade in as many pieces as possible for it. But it's a very good early game strategy. As you can see, the player from Denmark is up several points. Is that 9 points up? Holy moly. Definitely not an unwinnable game, but a much harder game for Frankie to play. The downside of this, of course, is that the player from Denmark has a very underdeveloped board, whereas our board is a lot more open, so it's a lot easier for us to flesh everything out. I don't really agree with that. We're down 9 points, so going for a piece trade where it's just a one-for-one trade is not really what you want to be doing. Typically speaking, when you're down in material, you want to make sure you are conserving your pieces as much as possible. Frankie might be cooking something up, but right now he is down a knight, rook, and bishop, in addition to a pawn. Places the king in check. Bishop comes to cover. And Frankie might be cooking something here. That was a very good move. Knight to d4. player from Denmark doesn't really have any way to answer that rook. Doesn't have any way to answer that knight. Knight being protected by the rook in the e-file. Unfortunately, you don't want to trade in the rook like that. Excellent job by Frankie seeing the discovered check by moving the knight. Gets his king out of danger's way. Starting to advance some of those pawns to meet Denmark's pawns on the ABC rows. ABC files, I mean. Also forgot to mention, Commerce are the black pieces for game 2. Denmark are the white pieces for game 2. My apologies for not updating that earlier. Frankie in quite a pickle at the moment. His king is pinned into their current location. He's got to try to see if there's something he can do to help his pieces out a little bit. This is a rough spot to be in for Frankie. Again, a really aggressive opening from the Denmark player at the beginning of the game. That led to Frankie being at a massive piece advantage straight out the gate. Definitely not impossible to bring this back. It'd be quite a monumental feat if Frankie does pull it off. Frankie threatening the bishop on g5. Bishop retreats, more or less as expected. This might be the endgame march from the player from Denmark. Oh, and I think that might be mate from Denmark. Oh, no, it's not. I'm blind. Hmm. As Frankie's pointed out with the red squares, their king is completely pinned at the moment. I probably would have preferred moving the bishop to c5. At least it threatens the rook in the position it's in. But I'm not sure any of these moves are very good at this point in the game. And again, going for the one-for-one trade, but Frankie is very down in material. They do have a half-decent opportunity here to do something that could be helpful. Let's see if they see it. Yeah, passed pawn is a super useful move. Unfortunately, the opponent knows about an en passant. Frankie, do you know what an en passant is? That was a good gamble, hoping they would not know what an en passant was. I also think it was the correct position in that move, because if you create the passed pawn, then you actually have a route to getting a relevant piece. Whereas if you're just moving one of the other pawns up, you're not accomplishing anything. It stinks that they did know what an en passant was, but I think we had to take that gamble. And that'll be the match. Unfortunately, the Denmark player takes it. Denmark player, really solid game one from Frankie and the Denmark player, but game two was just a masterclass of aggression from Denmark. GG's to Denmark. They had a really solid player, and we'll see.